Thank you. So, we're middle of talking about the concept of iskafia. The reason why we do iskafia. The reason why iskafia is important. In other words, the reason why if there's something I want to do, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to at least delay it for a few minutes or for a minute, simply because I want to do it. And again, this all takes us back to the first parak of Tanya, whereas we explained, the Alter Rebbe asks a bunch of questions, and the Alter Rebbe, he says, but all this will be understood based on the notion that we all have two neshamas, two nefashos. We have two different and distinct personalities. And sometimes, what Alter Rebbe is basically saying is, in life, there are two ways. We all know that we're battling in life. But what is the battle that we're battling? What is the battle? So many of us, especially when we're looking at it through a Jewish lens, many of us say, what is my battle? The battle is, what am I going to do right now? It's behavior, a behavior battle. Okay, so it's deeper than behavior. It's also even the way I speak and the way I think. But how often do we think about the battle not being about what we do, but about who we are? So again, that's revolutionary and it's based on Tanya. Before Tanya, what do you mean, who am I? There is me, and I can do this or I can do that. I can behave this way, I can behave that way. I can think this way, I can think that way. I can speak this way, I can speak that way. But it's me, right? And there's no choice about who I am. The choice is how the me is going to behave and is going to act. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. The whole Tanya is predicated on the idea, no. Your fight isn't about what you're going to do. The fight is about who you're going to be. Are you going to be your nefesh elokis? Are you going to express your nefesh elokis? Or are you going to express your nefesh habahamis? And here is where one of the big differences is. If I want to eat a piece of cake, and according to the Torah, it's permitted, what reason is there for me not to eat this cake? Or what reason is there at least for me to say, I'll eat it, but in a minute? What's wrong with eating it? From a Jewish standpoint, what's wrong with eating it? And let's say it's, what? So I should say, let's say it's 0 fat and 0 calories and somehow or other, miraculously, it's not 0 taste. Usually those things go together. Because if my struggle is not what I'm going to do, but who am I going to be at this moment when I have this burning urge for this piece of cake and I eat it? Who am I right now? Am I my nefesh elokis or am I my nefesh habahamis? Am I expressing my godly self, or my more instinctual, natural, impulsive self? And that is the ultimate struggle that we have. The ultimate struggle. There are two things. Yes, there's Torah and there's mitzvahs, and that's all very important, and Hashem wants it. But if all the Hashem wanted was Torah and mitzvahs, Hashem would have made us all tzaddikim. There's the struggle. But what is the struggle? There is within me klipa. Again, what does the word klipa mean? Klipa sounds very bad. What does the word klipa mean? Klipa means simply a shell. Something which is not the truth. Something which obscures the truth. Something which doesn't express the godly reality. So there is klipa within me, the animal soul. There is godliness within me. At any moment in my life, I can choose to be an expression of one of these two flows of energy sources. It's almost as if I have two battery packs and one plug. And my question is, at any moment in time, where am I plugging myself in? Where am I getting my energy from? And what energy am I transmitting with the way I'm behaving, acting, thinking, etc.? The struggle of the nefesh, of the struggle of our struggle, the struggle of the Beinoni, but our struggle is to try to make sure that as much as possible we're plugged in to the godless. So the unplugging from the animal soul, from the nefesh habahamis, has value within itself. So when I don't eat that piece of cake, or when I say I'm going to eat that piece of cake, but I'm going to eat it in 10 minutes, what I've done is, for 10 minutes, and that's a very, very good thing. What I've done is for 10 minutes, I have expressed my nefesh elokis, and I've done iskafia, meaning I've suppressed my nefesh habahamis, I've suppressed the kid. Yeah.
What would you say would be a good help for a person to have that, to be prepared? So when an unexpected situation, and almost all situations are unexpected when it comes up, that they don't immediately go to the easy way out. That they think that stop a minute and think I better plug myself in. How do you do that?
The question is, how do you prepare yourself that for an unexpected situation when you need this iskafia? How do you prepare to be ready for it? That you shouldn't immediately fall back on default status, which is to indulge, give in, do what you want, etc. And here, by the way, we're not even talking about in the case when it's harmful. And obviously, many times it is harmful. Okay, the cake sometimes could be harmful, or other things. There's the first part of this chapter was devoted, we said, to iskafia, to suppressing the animal soul in areas which are forbidden. Now we're moving on even to areas of the permitted. That's a great question. Anyone have any ideas on that? Sorry? Practice. How do you practice the unexpected things? Correct. Yes.
Like when, let's say, somebody criticizes or insults a person, a lot of times the immediate response is to be defensive instead of maybe give it a little thought. You could understand where the other person is coming from instead of trying to protect your own ego.
That just shifted the conversation in a whole different direction altogether. In other words, that's here we're talking about withholding from doing that which you desire, and there you're talking about ego and getting angry, and it's a different conversation. It's a different conversation. But what Liara said is definitely correct. I think it was Liara that we can't prepare for the unexpected without doing first the expected. Now, it's easy for us to say that as long as I'm not 100% rid of or clear of things that are wrong, I do things that are wrong. Is it fear or is it right even for me to focus and say, okay, I'm also going to try to start doing iskafia, and even things that I'm allowed to do, I'm not going to do. Okay, so I'm going to be a big holy person, and I'm not going to eat this piece of cake at least now or for another 10 minutes or whatever. I'm using cake as an example for anything else it may be. The concept of, because I want to do it, I'm not going to do it. But at the same time, I know that there are many other areas in my life where I'm not so strong and where I do indulge. And those areas where I do indulge perhaps not only are worse, but they're forbidden. So maybe it's, we always have to do things in order and sequentially. And if you jump too high, usually you come falling down. So the question is iskafia something which is applicable for those of us over here who have not yet mastered our animal soul in those areas which are in other areas, and we can say that We never give in to the animal soul in the areas that are forbidden. So now my next frontier is going to be, I'm going to even those things that are permitted. So for those of us around here who haven't reached that yet level, that level, is a skafia for us. I'll open that question over here. What are your thoughts on that? You had a thought on that? You know the answer. I don't know the answer. But the piece of cake is an analogy. It doesn't have to be the piece of cake. It can be anything that you want. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be food either. Whatever we want, which is the area of it's not good, it's not bad. It's the area of the permitted. But I want. I want to have it. I want to say it. I want to think it. Whatever it may be, because I want, I say no. Either I say no, or I say no and I delay it, which is also the example, a perfect example of a skafia. Right. In terms of the struggle, the dominance of the nefesh shalakis, it doesn't really matter whether the thing that you want is forbidden or not forbidden. In terms of that struggle, I don't have a definitive answer to that question. Maybe the last 10 different mashpim will give you 10 different answers. It doesn't say here clearly on Tanya whether the exact the Tanya doesn't say even if you're still doing you're still once in a while stumbling in the area of the forbidden, still you should be doing a skafia. But I have a feeling that is a wise idea. And that in general, when we're talking about this again, as we spoke last time, we spoke other times, it's never a good idea to try to grab too much, and we have to know where we're heading for, keep our eye on the target, but at the same time realize that the only way to get there is by taking steps, once in a while, and to come along and say, I'm going to, from today on, I'm committed. I'm going to. That's it. Only nefesh shalakis. I'm never going to plug my plug into the Nefesh Muhammad's battery pack. It's just never happening again. I'm never going to do anything forbidden. And in fact, I'm never even going to do anything that I want anymore because I'm going to be completely godly and holy. That could be a tzaddik, or that could be us also for around 4 minutes. Okay. And then after the 4 minutes, then you're usually not even back by square one. You went back a few spaces after that also because of the depression and everything else that kicks in, and you get all the spirit. Okay, and I'll never make it. And I'll never be good, and that's it. I'm not going to try, and then all those other bad things that you were holding yourself back. Now you suddenly go and you want to do them because there's no point anyways. So the key is always making small steps. We know where we want to go. We commit to small steps. So I could say, I'll try to in this area to do more and more. But let's say, for example, someone who hasn't davened for whatever reason, and that person says, I'm making a commitment to daven. So what would you advise that person? What are you going to daven? Should that person commit not to daven 3 times a day, every single word of davening? Start with Maida'ani. Very good. Okay. Sorry? 1 time a day. Okay. Maybe even you would say 1 time a day, 3 times a week. Right? But we're all in the same. You start small, right? Now, let's say we're counseling that person. You're that person's mashpia. Now, the person's coming to you, and the person's feeling a spiritual awakening, and the person says, you know what, I feel really bad. I want to start moving up. But and you ask the person, where's your davening? He says, I don't daven. Or she says, I don't daven, whatever it may be. So you can advise that. So the person says, I'm feeling very, very spiritual right now. Are you telling me that I shouldn't say any more than Maida'ani? What if I want to daven mincha today? You're telling me I should take baby steps. I get that. You're telling me, but should I not, Or if I tell the person to daven 3 times a week, so and if it's the other day and you're telling me I absolutely shouldn't daven, what would your answer be to that?
I think 1 time is fine, but not to commit, not to get into that and overwhelm oneself with fighting off more than one can chew. But for one time, you don't have to withhold yourself from doing something good.
Okay. And the point, so I think what you're saying is, which I'm thinking, what I would tell a person, again, this is not, I wouldn't say this is etched in stone. This is my thoughts on the matter. I would say, you're committing to do Maidan. That, for the next 2 weeks, you're committing to. Make a realistic commitment. You're committing to daven whatever it is, once a day or 3 times a week. You can daven, you want 100 times a day. But that's not a commitment. There's a big difference over there. So that, if you're up to it, good. And what the difference is, because the commitment makes sure you keep. And the other stuff, okay, if yes, if not, but you're not going to get down on yourself afterwards for not doing it because you never committed to it. And if you're fine with it, and then 2 weeks from now we meet again, it went well, we increase the dosage, Yeah. If you break a commitment, it breaks you. It hurts. And then it causes damage. Psychologically, in other words, I didn't do it, so I can't do it. So when you keep a commitment, you feel good about yourself. You're ready to move to the next stage and to the next stage. That's an important thing. But if you break a commitment, it's difficult. It's spiritually and psychologically difficult. So you could daven as much as you want, but the commitment has to be a small commitment. And in Yiddishkeit, that's an important thing because we all have very high aspirations for ourselves. When we say taking step by step, that doesn't mean that we're lowering our aspiration. And right now, my only aspiration is this step. That's only my only, and nothing else. No, let's keep a broad mind. I know where I want to go. So if I walk out today from today's class, and I'm all inspired by this notion of Iskafia, and 30 times today, I decide I'm not doing what I want. I have this urge to do something. I don't do it. I delay it. That's great. That's amazing. But don't commit to that, because that's path to destruction. So what could you commit to? Could commit to one thing. I think it's wise to take one thing in the area of the forbidden and one thing in the area of the permitted. So I drink coffee in the morning, every morning. Okay. I'm used to doing it at this time or right after I finish davening. Wait 5 minutes. That's one thing. But basically, Iskafia, what it does is it gets a certain idea through to us. And nothing gets it through to us more than Iskafia. In other words, when I'm tempted to sin and I hold myself back, it's very important that we discussed the value of the struggle. We discussed it in the first part of the chapter. But in a certain extent, I don't think it gets through the idea to me, into my awareness and into my consciousness, this notion that my desires and my wants, where do they come from? They come from the Nefesh HaBahamis. Is the Nefesh HaBahamis bad? No, it's not. But I have higher aspirations than that. There's bigger and better for me. Our klipa down here, the klipa above becomes suppressed also, and God's glory becomes revealed, and it has that little thing that we do over here has incredible impact above, which is also something to think about. And it gives us a little motivation to do the right thing and to suppress ourselves when we realize what little me is causing above. Yeah.
I would think, this whole area though is very tricky, and that a person really needs to know themselves and have some practice with the shula, because it's, life is so complex, and there's a lot of things that a person might feel a natural tendency that they want to do, they enjoy doing, and if they're honest with themselves, they think, well, maybe it's a good thing if it really brings me closer to Hashem, like eating healthy breakfast, or taking a walk, or having a chat with a friend, or having downtime. A lot of things that are enjoyable and that we have a tendency to do. So those might not be the right areas to choose for Iskafia. And a person could get confused because they might think, well, I really enjoy this, so maybe this is the area I should choose. This is something that's easy for me to delay. But maybe that's exactly the wrong thing for them to choose, because that's actually bringing them closer to Hashem. So I think it's very tricky.
I agree. And having a mashpia is obviously vital. But it's important also who the mashpia is going to be. It has to be someone, that everyone spoke about in the early years, in the 50s. So there was a big issue then about microphones on Shabbos. Today, microphones on Shabbos is forbidden, but it wasn't so obvious at that time, and there were different opinions about it. If the microphone is left on from before Shabbos, so maybe it isn't maybe it isn't forbidden. Maybe this type of microphone or that type of microphone. And there are actually Orthodox rabbis who permitted it. Some Orthodox rabbis, and there's also some electricians, people understood it, who permitted it. And basically, what the Rebbe said at that time, what the Rebbe came out very, very strongly against saying that it's forbidden, and probably forbidden in Torah. And what the Rebbe, when I remember what the Rebbe said then, letter or said it to someone, the Rebbe says that there are some people who know halacha and they don't know electricity. There's some people who know electricity and they don't know halacha. I know both electricity and halacha because the Rebbe studied engineering, so I'm qualified to tell you, and I'm telling you that this is 100% forbidden. And in the same vein over here, the mashpia that you choose has to have both worlds in a way. Some people are very, especially today, some of the people who are out there who are mashpiyim are very 21st century and pop psychology, and they know, in addition, or especially they've read all the books out there and they know what's important for a person. And in terms of their knowledge of Chassidus and the Rebbe, it's more peripheral and more what they call makif. I learned a few sikhs, a few mamarim also, but it's not really a deep understanding of that. That's not a mashpia. At the same time, to find a mashpia whose head is in the clouds and knows the mamarim and the Tanya and just compare it to what it says without a keen understanding of human life and reality is also not what you want. You need someone to find with a mix, which isn't usually easy to find, but if you find it, that's a real blessing. So here we have the principle, which is in many places in Chassidus, which is called Dam Ma Lamayla B'Mcha. You have in Pirkei Avos, know what is above you, and on this the Zitcher Maggid says, Da Malamayla, know that which is above, all comes from you. That whatever happens in the upper world is all a reflection of us. In fact, we say in Tehillim, we say it in davening also, Hashem Tzilcha, God is your shade. So in a literal sense, what does that mean? That that God is like the tree that offers you shade. In other words, that protects you. I think it's a Baal Shem Tov, or maybe it's also the Maggid says here also, that what does it mean that God is your shade? Just like if you're standing and you pick up your hand, and if there's shade, you move your hand, the shade moves. The way you move, God moves. God is our shade means that literally God responds to us, and however we behave, God responds in kind. And this is a basic Kabbalistic idea that it's very interesting that although we know that the flow there's what's called a Seder Hishtalshelus, which means there's a chain of worlds, and the flow of divine energy comes down, right? So usually when there's a flow that comes downwards, who controls the flow? Where the source, the flow is controlled at the source, and here is it's a very interesting dynamic. The flow flows from above to us, and here we are down here with the levers, and we're controlling exactly what flows and how it flows. Which is fascinating. We're the recipients, but we are the ones at the controls. And how do we control it? When we behave, that's how it's. For example, very simple. The famous saying: you do another person a favor, boom, that's the lever. Hashem does you a favor. Hashem is our shade means that reciprocating. It's called midah keneged midah, but actually it's all built-in system to the way God created the world, and God created the whole system is that everything responds to our touch. So just as, and that's why the human being, by the way, is a microcosm of everything, so that everything above is controlled by everything within us. Everything that there is above is below, because everything has to be what's called kigavna. we say in the Friday night, but there's another. Kegavna means everything is identical. Everything's mirror images. We're mirror images of above and above and above. Everything's higher and holier, but it's mirror images. So every time we push a certain button in our little area, we activate the corresponding thing above. And that's why we know, like, God expresses himself in 10 spherot, right? In 10 spheres, in 10 different ways. Wisdom, understanding, kindness, etc. And we're mirror images. Why? Because that's how we activate God's attributes. That's why God created us in that way. And same thing over here. Within every single one of us, there is the godly, and then there is the klipa, right? The godly soul and the nefesh habahamis. The same thing is above. Just like it is within the human being, there's a spiritual, larger, cosmic powers of klipa versus God and God's and the godly energy. Says the Alter Rebbe, that's what he's saying over here. That's what the Zohar is saying. When I suppress my klipa, what happens? The klipa above is suppressed. That's the way it works. When the klipa above is suppressed, what does that mean? The word klipa means a shell. We're uncovering and we're revealing godliness, which obscures, which isn't revealed godliness. That's what klipa is. Again, when we associate the word klipa, could be bad. In other words, godliness can be bad. Klipa could be bad. Klipa isn't by definition bad as we understand it. All we're saying is that a Jew has the ability to reveal the pure godly core of the soul. The klipa doesn't. Klipa means there's always going to be that covering. The covering is the ego, is the me, which covers over the selfless godly. Okay? So this is so important, because otherwise, when we misconstrue terminology, then it becomes, first of all, then we have a wrong idea of what a non-Jew is, and then it could be misconstrued as racist, which it isn't. You know, I find it interesting about the Rebbe. I thought about this many times, that I don't know if there was ever a Gadol Yisrael, if there was ever a Jewish leader who held non-Jews in the same esteem as the Rebbe. Very respectful, very extremely respectful, and spoke about non-Jews many times, and encouraged us to, that we have to involve ourselves. There are many different stories about this. The Rebbe's cure for the entire world. There's the story that I just heard a few days ago. I can't verify it, but I heard that it's from multiple sources, and that there's a shliach in Florida who heard the story from the person. But again, I can't personally verify it. I work for publications, and I have a very high standard of verification. So when I say a story, no, really, when I write a story in whether it's Chabad or JLI, I have to hear it from the person, or a person at maybe secondhand is the most I'll accept. I say someone says I heard it from the person who happened. This I can't say it's secondhand even, but the story that's been going around is that there was this person in Florida who went to a marital therapist, a couple, Chabad couple, and the therapist was an African American lady. They come into her office, and there's a picture of the Rebbe hanging in her office. Big picture. You heard the story? Yeah, obviously. So after for the appointment, after what is this all about? I wasn't preparing to say the story. I hope I remember the details, and if I get stuck in it, I hope I don't. But the bottom line is, she says that she lived on President Street over here, right next to Rebbe. You heard the story? Then you probably know better than me. Maybe say it.
I don't remember so much also. So she was a neighbor. No, she sold the house to the Rebbe, yeah?
What?
She sold the house to the Rebbe, or she was
No. She lived on the block.
Okay, so she was a neighbor, and her husband died. And the Rebbe came to her after the funeral happened, and he gave her an advice. He asked her really politely, do you mind if I give you an advice, something like this?
Yeah. But I think even beforehand, the Rebbe would always say hi, and the Rebbe would walk.
Yeah.
And by the funeral, the Rebbe stopped, and the Rebbe watched the funeral for a few minutes, I think, right?
Yeah. He was really respectful to the whole thing that was going on, and he was always nice to the neighborhood. He would say hi to all the neighbor when they pass through. She said like for sure, like you can even advise. She said like I think you should go to Florida. Uh, and become a social
Oh,
worker.
you all know the story. Okay, good.
I don't know.
Okay, so
So I would say you need a new setting. You need to move. In other words, because it's too painful over here. You need a new start. Go somewhere else. I think they ever said, for example, Miami Beach. That's the way I heard the story.
I don't know. But then she did go there.
Oh, well, more.
And she-
And the Rebbe said also, and involve yourself in religion.
Yeah, you need to be active with
In religion.
Christianity or.
I don't know if they ever said Christianity. They ever said be active in religion.
The church she was like.
So she moved to Miami. She joined the church, and like a few weeks later, there she met a new guy. She married. Now she's happily married and happy in Miami.
Yeah, have kids.
No kids.
She got kids. And then she doesn't have in her office. She put a picture of the rabbit because she's so respectful to him. He advised her to go there, and she carried on her life, and she's much happier. And he, bring light to her life. But she doesn't have a mezuzah, so the Jew came in and he asked, "Where's the mezuzah?" in her office. And I don't have the mezuzah, but she tells the rabbit story.
Yeah. No,
But she's not, but like the Jewish person.
I'm not even sure if you're allowed to put up mezuzah there. But they're quite. There are a lot of stories like this. There's another famous story about this police officer who was by the mikveh by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him a bracha, and he had a kid, also an African American. His kid's name Menachem Mendel. And you have to realize that by many other people, where this comes from, also conditioning. We have to face the fact that we were persecuted for many, many centuries. And yes, that there developed a certain attitude, Jewish attitude towards non-Jews and how we view them. But you go to perhaps another, and you say, the Rebbe gave a bracha to a non-Jew, to an African American to have a kid. Really? Why would they ever want another goy on the world, right? But the Rebbe always gave brachas. The Rebbe held non-Jews in the highest esteem, more than anyone else. At the same time, I don't know if there's anyone else like the Rebbe who saw the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew, and the incredible difference and advantage of a Yid over a Goy. These two poles, which are very interesting. On the one hand, a Goy is extremely valuable. At the same time, there's no comparison between a Yid and a Goy. And I'm an editor, and one of my biggest things is I absolutely love seeing the Rebbe's edits. And from a professional level, the Rebbe was a master editor. Without, even if this isn't the Rebbe, someone would just show me this edits, the way the Rebbe edits, and the Rebbe pulls around, changes paragraphs by putting in a word, taking out a word. The Rebbe, the way the Rebbe is always understated, always insists on being understated instead of screaming and being extreme. There's a lot of amazing things. And then I worked with some people who saw other stuff. So I've never seen this, but I've heard. I once wrote an article and I gave it to someone, and there I wrote something about Jews and non-Jews alike. I remember that this is important for all humanity. Jews and non-Jews alike. I remember the exact context. And that person who knew what he's talking about said, whenever the Rebbe saw that, the Rebbe would erase the words alike. Don't write Jews and non-Jews alike. Jews and non-Jews. And there were certain things that the Rebbe that never went by the Rebbe. Another interesting. The Rebbe never liked the word magic. Never like, come Pesach night for a magical experience. The Rebbe never. There are certain words that have certain connotations which the Rebbe didn't. But the point is, here's the same Rebbe who says, I'll never write Jew or non-Jew alike. And there were always, when the Rebbe said a Yid and a Nit Yid, would say Lahavdil, but had tremendous respect for the non-Jew. Because again, it's not a difference between good and bad. Jew and non-Jew is not good and bad. It's a difference between good and better. But it's good and amazingly better. It's a difference between a beautiful human being and a godly being, which is an infinite difference. But again, it's not about putting a non-Jew down. It's about what a Yid is. What a Yid is because he was chosen. How did we get here? Oh, so you asked.
The difference, especially in context of Scotland.
So one second. So this notion of the struggle between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis, that doesn't exist by a non-Jew. However, does a non-Jew struggle? You don't have to learn Tanya to know the answer to that question. The non-Jew struggles within the Nefesh HaBahamis itself, because the animal soul can express itself in many ways. Even by a Yid, the animal soul can express itself in many ways.
So does a Yid struggle even more? But does a Yid have another
It's a
dimension
different
to their
struggle. It's a different struggle. The goy can never have that struggle either. 1 second. The point is that for selfish reasons, what am I going? If I'm selfish, which is what everything in this world is, except for the nefesh elikis, including the nefesh Bahamas of a Yid. Selfish ego, me, right? I don't express God. I express me. This table doesn't say God; it says table. Not really, you look at it. Everything expresses itself. How does it express itself? Let's say I'm going to disregard my nefesh elikis. So what am I going to do? I can express myself by being kind to another person, by being helpful to another person, and gaining satisfaction from that. Or I can express myself by killing another person and taking their money. That's a struggle. Maybe not to me, but the point is, the non-Jew struggles also. And yes, the non-Jew also might want to do a skafia in the sense of working on self-control and trying to access the higher part of him as opposed to the lower part of him. But they're both part of the same personality. By the Yid, it's not, there are two parts of one personality. It's two personalities which we're trying to, which is a struggle
between.
between.
Does the Yid feel that more acutely? Or does it have more of like an identity crisis or something?
Actively plugged into, by the way, is always sending me remote control signals. In other words, even if I'm plugged into the Nefesh HaBahamis, it doesn't leave go. It doesn't say, okay, it's sending me signals, please rejoin me, come back. And when I'm plugged into Nefesh Elikis, it's sending me all the way around. Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't give up. It's sending me, I don't know if remote control signals are more like electrical shocks. I'm like, okay, it's time. You want this, and you want that, you want the other. That's the thing. Wherever we're plugged into, the other side doesn't give up the battle. It's trying to win us back over. Okay, I want to finish this parak inside this chapter so that Mir Hashem next week we can start chapter 28. We are holding on page, if you have the Hebrew only Tanya, it's on page 68. If you have the Hebrew English Tanya, I'm not sure where it is. But if you can give me one, I can show you.
One help to find chapter 28.
If you give it to me, I'll tell you.
Which chapter is it?
It's the middle of chapter 27. The third side. We're starting. Here we go. Here, on page 120 or 119, if you're looking at the corresponding English. We're going to start where it says Veloy Oid. One 10 lines from the top. Yes, 10 lines from the top. So until now in the chapter we discussed, Alter was talking about the struggle that we have, but the struggle was in those areas of the forbidden, the unhealthy. When I say unhealthy, I don't necessarily mean sugar. In other words, unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy attitudes, unhealthy perspectives, unhealthy feelings, unhealthy, obviously, speech and behavior. The struggle against those. And now we move on, says the Alter Rebbe. Furthermore, even things that are completely permitted. Question? As much as a person sacrifices his or her inclination, even if it's not permanent, even if it's just delaying gratification temporarily, and through that the person has in mind to suppress the sitra achra shebachol asmoli, which is in the left ventricle of the heart. For example, a person wants to eat and delays the meal for an hour, or less. During that time, instead, that person studies Torah. In other words, not that you're replacing one gratification with another, but you're actually doing something useful during that time. Yeah. Okay. Sorry? The Alter Rebbe doesn't address that. This is, again, there is no... Alter Rebbe isn't saying you have to do this. Alter Rebbe is telling you the effect of what happens if you do this. It's a good thing. Now,
I don't think that's about what he's talking about. I'll just say it here. And learning Torah. In other words, holding back that he's doing coming close to Hashem during that time. So that's what's very tricky. I think it's about a very valid question.
if your hunger is going to cause that you shouldn't be able to serve Hashem, then it's a bad thing. The Alter Rebbe is very clear about that later in the Gersa Tshuva about fasting. You don't fast today. It says that someone who's fasting and that causes him to learn less Torah, that person's called a sinner. That's what the Alter Rebbe brings down from the Gemara. But the point here about studying Torah is we're not trying to replace one thing with another. It's not as, okay, I'm not going to eat this. Instead, I'll do this what I want. The point is, no, I'm going to spend these 3 minutes not indulging myself and doing something which is greater. Which brings me to another point, which is that sometimes iskafia isn't really iskafia. The person who says, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do the other, and I'm going to let everyone know about it. So what did that person accomplish? So you held back your desire for eating that donut, and instead you indulged your desire for honor and for gaiva, for arrogance. You know, I decided I'm not eating donuts every morning. I'm going to wait for 5 minutes. Isn't that great? Well, better eat the donut because that's actually less of a desire and a temptation than whenever I teach this chapter. I always say, iskafia is between you and God. The moment someone else finds out about it, it's almost like you lost the whole point of it, which is not to do what you want to do, and it's not about what I want. And the desire to tell someone else is definitely from the Nefesh HaBahamis. And we desire that the Chassidim, they would actually have pain when people found out about if they did something which was one story that I heard is there's I have a lot of stories I heard from this chassid. His name is Mendel Merazov. He's an older chassid, lives in Crown Heights, and he brings. And his father was a very famous chassid, who was a secretary of the Rebbe Rashab and of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So he says like this. He says that his father would fast every Monday and Thursday, always. And then certain weeks during the winter, it's called Shevavim Tat, designated Shuvah weeks. It's 6 weeks in a normal year and 8 weeks in a leap year. He would fast every day, a whole week long, 6 days a week. I think 6 days a week, maybe 5 days a week, maybe not Friday, but he'd fast every single day. However, no one knew about it. In other words, officially, no one knew. It was never said. It was something which he said I was his son, so I knew because I saw he didn't eat. But it was, you never heard from him on fasting day. There's no such thing. What? Why what? Why?